Tyson always says hello, Internet. This is a Tyson video, so
Hello, Internet.
hello, Internet. So we are rewiring the S14 for a number of reasons, but I want to talk a little bit about what I had last year, some of the problems we had, and what we're looking forward to this year, how we're solving those problems, and what features we're going to add. Some of the issues we had last year included melting fuses and
Melting relays, melting fuses, melting fans,
a lot of melting.
a lot of melting.
FD is the hardest environment for a car, and even running a Pro-Am season or a season anywhere else, the cars just don't encounter the same extremes. The speeds are slower, the time between battles, like just the overall wear on the car is so much higher. You almost can't test it for the conditions without getting it into the conditions. So yeah, I didn't have the rookie year that I wanted because I had a car that was experiencing all of those environments for the first time, and now I feel like we've identified what the points of failure were and we have solutions for them.
We were also flying pretty blind through a lot of the technical challenges that we faced. So one of the big things on the list is add some data acquisition so that we can find teething problems before they become battle losses or down the car, things like that.
I really was new to the concept of using data for driver development. That was something that really came into effect as I tried to develop as a driver, since I really struggled to deal with maintaining boost, the turbo in general, us adding nitrous. And when I started using the data to actually evaluate my driving and how I needed to change it, or we started looking at the data to decide what gear ratio to use, there's so much more that we can do with data, and this opportunity allows us to add so many more sensors, collect so much more information, and just do diagnostic both for the driver and for the car at a much higher level.
All right, so if we're not familiar with this car, because I don't know how much content you've made around it, but this Zero, sweet. All right, well, this is a 2JZ non-VVTi. Big old single turbo with a lot of wastegate action, and yeah, it makes like 700, I think, on high boost. I don't know how far. More than that? How much more than that?
I think it's like almost 850 wheel.
I've never been present when we had a dyno that actually read numbers.
Oh yeah, I mean, so the last time we dynoed this car was actually
Utah.
before the season, like with a dyno to figure out the power it had. Like we've tuned it a bunch of times when we added nitrous, when we added a new engine and blew that up. But since this engine combo went in the car, which was Utah, we didn't dyno it. We just drove it.
Stock Ford head with bigger cams. I can't even remember 264s. I can't remember what they are.
Great question. I think so.
Yeah. And then the usual stuff. It's been refreshed and rebuilt. Air people, rod bolts, damper, all the things you do with a 2J to keep it alive, and AccuSump, things you do to keep it alive at this level. So for this year, we're going away from cable throttle, and we're bringing it into the 21st century, and she's going drive-by-wire, and then just a bunch of data. One of the changes that we did last year, literally mid-season, was nitrous. So that is getting solidified, and actually the work I did was not bad, so I think most of that's staying. Yeah, I think we're keeping it.
What's really, I think, cool about Tyson and the way that he wires is that he comes in, he builds the whole thing out of strings from the dollar store, then he goes home and he makes this entire harness. So what we're doing this weekend is literally laying out every wiring position, figuring out what we need to figure out in terms of like, okay, what do we need a 90 for this sensor? Like everything that we need so that in theory, and it's always a theory, when we come back in 2 to 3 weeks, we'll just be able to plug it all in.
But we spent the whole day yesterday going over the car with the Drift Cave guys who are doing the fab, and we're all going to be on the same page, and the strings help us visualize where everything's going to be, and then we can all refer back to pictures and whatever else later.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I feel like every single time Tyson makes this really clear list of this is the way that I like to do things, and it's very professional, and I like to have all these things, and I'm the last person, and every time I'm like, okay. And then I present him with not those conditions whatsoever, and he very kindly works through them anyway.
And then, it's like, hey, I need it done in like half the time that it would usually take you. I'm like, yeah, cool.
With half the things that you requested.
I just won't sleep for a while. It'll be fine.
So, a big part of what Tyson always does is future proofing because I like to think that I know what I'm going to do, but in reality, I don't. And we learned that with the Z when he asked me certain questions. I can't even remember what I told him I definitely didn't need or wasn't going to add. And I think I already called to be like, so what if,
Yeah.
what if I did this? Yeah.
So for this car, non-VVTi 2J, but I'm still putting a VVTi plug in it so that if the head ever changes to a VVTi head, then you're good to go. And I'm also putting it so that I don't have to change any wiring on the back side of the car, but if you ever went V8 or LS, then you'd have to.
So, this is the fee for mentioning an LS anywhere near this car.
There is a rule.
There is a rule.
Enacted a rule in Utah.
Yeah.
But anyway, now that I've spent the thing, if we did the unspeakable thing, it's ready to do that, and we'd only have to change the engine side.
And I told you, if someone shows up with a built LS, they want to give me
maybe two built LS.
Yes, two actually, two. Then I'll put it in the car.
All right, so the inside of the car, we're keeping the Link dash. We're keeping the Link ECU because we like it and because of the rules. And all the electronic components are going to end up just on the bottom of this big plate. Last year we had them on the firewall, and turns out they didn't like that. It was a bit hot. So fill all those holes in, put this in a big space that if I had to lay in the car and work upside down like I did last year, I have elbow room. I have a little bit more space to play. So that'll be improvement and nicely laid out. We can put the PDMs up here. We can put the what I'm calling Kevin's corner for the FD logger and all the other rulebook requirement things. In the back, we still have nitrous bottle in the same spot with the bottle heater, quick disconnect and all that stuff. The back firewall is probably where we're putting our PDMs and any rear electronics that are in the cabin. We're also going to do some like charger stuff for GoPro and some lighting to make the car a little easier to work on at night. And yeah, I think that's all we got going on here.
PD really, to be honest, I haven't seen this car in a month and it feels like 5 years. So I'm like, oh, I have a car. It just looks different than I remember. But
firewall on the inside, mount them up here where there's good airflow and they can cool and stay cool. And then there'll be a bulkhead connector here that all the rest of the stuff in the trunk will be fed by. And then probably one, I'm still working on where exactly we're going to put that, but a big one for power to come from the battery to the rest of the vehicle all the way up to the front where the starter is. Love this. Love the quick release handle is pretty sweet.
So literally, yeah, when I said, oh, I have to order, we're getting a custom fuel cell. That was the one Tyson request was get the new radial one with the hanger. It just pops out. It's so cool. And I called them and was like, I heard you have this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so this, and I'm going to put like a bulkhead connector or something close by so that if we did need to pull it, it's 9 bolts, 1 connector, whole thing pops out, change your fuel pump, change whatever, needs to be addressed, hopefully nothing, and then plops back in. And then moving further back, the AccuSump has moved a little bit, and we're going to have a sensor and a solenoid on that guy. We have these massive Spall fans with these, like, just so big, so good, so strong, so cool. All that stuff. Much cool. Big cool. As well as an electric water pump. So all of these are, like, electrical devices. And these fans, we can actually PWM control them from the ECU. They don't have to run full tilt all the time, which is probably, given how big the wiring is and how much amps they're probably likely to draw, our electrical system doesn't need to run them at full tilt all the time if possible. So we're also using ECU Master battery isolator, and we kind of alluded to this before, but the last car I wired for Z came about after an engine fire, fuel fire?
It was a fuel fire.
Fuel fire, and the car basically started itself as it was on fire. So this prevents that, as well as allows us to stay within the rule book for emergency shutoffs and CAN based as well, so we can actually log how much the starter is drawing, and we can log how much the whole car is drawing through it. More data, better decisions we can make. We're also going to do tail lights on a sub connector, and Matt actually told me that he does this, but he cuts the tabs off so that if all this fiberglass in the back, if it gets wall direct or whatever, the taillight harness will just fly off. It'll stay on there normally, but if you
So it's like quick release, basically.
Kinda, yeah. If you run, I mean, it'll be a little short little piece. I'll make 10 of them, and you know, if you run the wall too many times, we just put a new one on it. Nice serviceable part that's very easy to replace and makes the hole removing the rear.
10 makes me feel really like
Okay.
no,
Four?
I'm happy. No, I'm happy
Oh.
with that. It's like a vote of like you're gonna go hard this year, you know. So at this point, I guess it's nothing but strings. In a couple of weeks, it's going to be a fully complete wiring harness going into this car, and I think a lot more of the fab will be here and ready to go. And hopefully that means we'll be testing in 6 weeks. I don't know, less than I hope.
Hopefully less than 6
Hopefully
weeks.
less than 6 weeks.
Yeah, so why PDM? First off, you've never heard the term PDM. It stands for Power Distribution Module, and it's basically a body computer, but instead of fuses, it's all digital. So there's no fuses, there's no relays, but you can go in and set what amperage you want it to trip at. We can, and the Link Razor that we're going to be using, we can actually PWM control things. So the fans have their own, but the water pump or the front fans.
I'm really sorry. Okay, I actually didn't know this, so I'm going to ask.
Okay.
So there's like it's instead of fuses, there's like some kind of electronic version of that where it just goes, oh, that's too much load, and it just doesn't allow it anymore.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, that's...
And yeah, you can set it like fuses. You're like 5, 10, 15, 20. I can set it 2.3.
Okay.
Whatever I want, and I can also set it to retry. So if it's like a critical thing, I can set it how long I want between retries. If it's burning off something, like if you say hypothetically you smush the back of the wall, do a sick run, your bumper's flying off, but your taillight's dangling and rips off, and the bulb shorts out when that happens, the PDM will see that, trip the fuse because it's a dead short. But then if you give it a second when the taillight has left the building or the chat, then it'll turn back on and it'll work, and you won't get flagged for not having functional brake lights.
Okay.
So things like that are a massive advantage because the whole thing is to keep the car on track as much as possible. You're not allowed to touch the car in between runs. So even the diagnostics that it allows us to do is it can tell us amp draws of certain things. It can tell us basically Z could be driving back from a run and be like, the car's doing this thing, and she can flick to a different page on the dash and it'll tell her what the amp draw for this is or what the status of this is. If it's tripped, and we're like, okay, cool, start pulling this part because it's, you know.
But even to that note, like you guys can't touch the car in between run. I can push whatever button I want inside of my car in between runs. So
it's as close to telemetry as we can get. But if we can look at screens and radio each other, we can get a better idea than otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you, and you can say, oh, just override that, or
yeah, like look at this page. The car's overheating. Look at this page. Okay, cool. The rad fan's tripping. Why is the rad fan tripping? Go grab another one. Go grab a relay, or well, we don't have that, but you know, that's what we would have done if you know, we knew. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, check back in a couple weeks when we have a wiring harness and the car's good to go.